Connecting. Hi, everybody. I'm going to give you a few minutes to hop on. See how we're doing here. Well, we're climbing. Hope everybody's having a wonderful week. Perfect. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone to the Harmony Foundation webinar series. My name is Christy Weeks, and I am the digital media manager for Harmony. And today's presentation, The Importance of Engaging Families in Recovery, is being presented by one of our own, our family therapist, Morgan Roy. We're so excited to share this information with you. And as we go along, I'm going to share some information about Harmony, and then we'll get started with Morgan. So just a quick recap, because I know a lot of you have been with us before. We are a addiction treatment facility on a 43-acre campus in the Rocky Mountains, just outside of Estes Park. We believe that long-term recovery from alcohol and other drugs is possible. We've been treating addiction for over 50 years, and we have fostered a generation of long-term recovery who supports our clients and their families for a lifetime. We currently have about 70 beds for our residential program. We also offer a full medical detox, and we have an IOP program that we're very excited about, as well as a very robust alumni program. So if you want to learn more information about Harmony Foundation, please visit us at our website, www.harmonyfoundationinc.com, or you can contact our admissions staff at 866-686-7867. Just a couple of housekeeping rules I'm going to go through. Be sure to complete our evaluation at the end of the webinar. It should pop up for you. I will also include the link in a follow-up email when I send out your certificates, which you will receive by email. I'm asking that you give me until Monday, the end of day Monday on April 5th. To get your certificates out to you. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me at the email you see on the screen. We will be recording this, and it will be on our website, so you can have access to it afterwards. At that point, the CEU credit will not be valid, but you're more than welcome to rewatch and share as much as you wish. We will be answering questions at the end of our webinar. So if you have those, please enter them into the chat box, and we'll be watching and be sure to address as many as we can. We do keep track of how long you are involved in the webinar. You must be involved for 45 minutes for us to be able to issue a certificate. If for some reason you need to jump off, let me know, and I can get you a certificate of attendance versus a CEU. So again, any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll address them as soon as I possibly can. Our presenter today is Morgan Roy. She has a Bachelor of Science in Applied Psychology with a specialization in positive psychology and a Master's in Marriage and Family Therapy from Regis University. Morgan has extensive experience working with family systems, couples, young adults, and adolescents. Morgan has training and education in Gottman Method couples therapy and is currently level 2 certified and a certified leader of the 7 principles of making marriage work. We are so grateful for the work that she does at Harmony Foundation, and I'm even more excited that she gets to share her expertise and her experiences with you. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn everything over to Morgan.
Perfect.
Thank you, Morgan.
Let me just go ahead and share my screen as well. So give me a minute. Perfect. All right. So again, I'm Morgan, and I'm very excited to be doing this today. Families is kind of my thing. That's what I always say. And I really love the work that I do up at Harmony. And so we are just going to spend the next 45 minutes diving into family involvement and why it's so important, and some of the work that we've been doing and I've been doing with families over this last year, especially through COVID, and how that has kind of changed some things as well. And so First off, I just want to start with saying that family has this critical role to play in treatment of any kind of health problem, including substance abuse. It's a big deal. So, support from family members not only increases the likelihood of success in treatment, but it can also improve the psychiatric systems and symptoms that come from being in treatment. It can also help prevent a relapse. So, family involvement is a really powerful thing, and it's really special to see. Starting off, I just want to share what is a family system. As a marriage and family therapist, I think of things systemically. And so if we sit for it with it for a minute and think, we are a part of multiple systems throughout our lives. We have our family system, which we're going to focus on, but we also have a work system, which involves coworkers and peers and bosses, and so on. And then we have our friendship systems that we're a part of. And it could be our friendships over here with people that we went to school with. It could be our friendships that we've had because we live in the same neighborhood. We are a part of multiple systems throughout our lives, and our systems are constantly changing. And so we're going to focus on what a family system is, and especially with our people up at Harmony and what their systems look like. So, who can be involved in our system is we can have our traditional family involved in our systems. And our traditional family consists of moms, dads, spouses, siblings, and children. Those are kind of our traditional systems that we have. In our family system, we can also include our extended family. And so we can think of them as our grandparents, our aunts, our uncles, our cousins, so on. Those are extended families. And then one of my favorite things is our elected families. This is a big piece with our people up at Harmony as well, is that everybody's family system looks different and not everyone has the traditional family. And so it's really important that I include their elected family. It's who they choose, who is in their family, who's in their family system. And so these are people they identify. It could be a college roommate, a lifelong friend, a next door neighbor. It's who their system is included in. And so that's how I like to look at like what family systems are. When it comes to addiction and this effect that it has on the family, we're going to think about it in a couple different ways. So addiction strains relationships no matter who's involved and who has the problem. It doesn't matter if it's a parent, a child, a spouse, or a sibling. Every member of the family system struggles. And living with someone in active addiction is a daily challenge for everybody at home. It's easy to understand the structure of a family system, but where things can get difficult for us is to understand the inner workings of that family system and how that family system functions. It's important to remember and to know that all of our systems are different. And how I like to see it and what I like to say is that all of our stories are different. That's a big piece. A lot of times we kind of hit some roadblocks when we start comparing family systems. A lot of the people that I work with up at Harmony and their families, I hear things like, well, our family doesn't support like this family does, or our family doesn't do this. And when we start comparing our family systems, all it does is hurt us in the end. And so that's a big thing that I always want to preface is that all of our systems are different and all of our stories are different. We can have similarities with them, but at the end of the day, they're different. We know that all members in the system have different personalities, they have different perspectives, they have different interpretations of how they view certain relationships and events that happen. What I want to kind of hone in on and focus for a minute and get us thinking a little more systemically is that when one person does or doesn't do something, it affects the rest of the family. Maybe not everybody in the family, but it has this ripple effect. And so if we think about it like playing a game of pool, and it's like you have the cue ball, and that's the person who struggles with addiction. And then you have all of the other balls. and you hit the cue ball into the pile of the other balls and they scatter. Some are affected more than the others, some don't move at all. And so when we think about when addiction comes into our family system, it has this ripple effect. It's almost like throwing a stone into a pond. It doesn't just sink to the bottom, it creates these ripples. A lot of times when our person is struggling with addiction, they feel as if they're the stone and they just sink to the bottom. And sometimes it can feel like a really isolating experience. And so, what I like to kind of incorporate is that they're not alone in this process and this effect ripples out. And so, when we treat the person, we have to treat the whole family as well. Some concepts of systemic thinking. These are four that I really hone in and think about when working with families. I like to think that all parts of our system are interconnected and interrelated. What that means is we all have a connection to each other and we are all relating to each other in some capacity, in some way. And so when our person who struggles with addiction is affected, it kind of has, again, I'm going to say that over and over, this ripple effect. It may affect some parts of our system more than it affects others, but we're all interconnected. And so if one part of our system is affected by this, maybe this other part isn't, there's going to be this ripple effect from that person that kind of passes on. I like to think that if one part of our system changes, the other parts must change to accommodate those changes. And so when one person is struggling with addiction, it's not their responsibility to create the change. Everybody kind of has to change and adapt to accommodate them. I really love this mindset of small changes lead to bigger changes. This is an overwhelming process for a lot of families, and it's where do we go next? What do we do? And so I like to focus on small changes because they do lead to bigger changes. We have to kind of stop this cycle that's going on, and we have to create some small changes. Patterns occur in time and space. And so changing the time and changing the space are used often to kind of promote this rapid solution development. Again, depending on how long their stay is, if it's a full 30 days, if it's less, we have to kind of quickly create some changes. And so changing the time and changing the space, that would be changing the when and changing the where. With changing that, we start to do things differently. We start to kind of break that cycle that has been happening. There is this cycle, going back to this cycle that happens with the family systems. It begins to feel like there's no breaking this cycle, to be honest. It feels like we're on this track where we can't see the end in sight. And so it's hard to pinpoint where do we start to drift off and create those changes. And that's where that family involvement piece in treatment comes into play. When families engage in their own personal education while their person's in treatment, they're able to see that they're not alone in this process. It's a really special thing to see these families not only connect with each other, but to hear other stories. There's almost this big sense of relief of, I'm not alone. Families start to feel this immense amount of isolation, guilt, and shame when their person is struggling with addiction. So, knowledge is power for families. When there is a family component and they feel included in this process, not only in treatment, but the process of their own recovery, um, they are able to start creating these little changes that then create those big changes. I am a big proponent of while their person is recovering, they are also recovering. They have to come up with a recovery plan for themselves. And with this knowledge and having this educational background and this community component, when their person returns home, they are able to meet them where they're at. This will come back into play in a little bit, but this is an important thing is we have to meet our people where they're at. I use a lot of metaphors and analogies because I feel like we can relate to them. And so if we're thinking about our person coming home from treatment and we think about this path of life that we're on, if we hold our person like 10 steps back on our path and we're over here, we're not meeting them where they're at and we're not able to kind of see and hear them in a different way. And so I love being optimistic and being positive in a realistic way. Families, when they start to get into this mindset of this time is different, I'm putting in that education and that work myself, we're able to see and hear our people in a way that we haven't been able to see and hear them before. There's this deeper understanding of what's happening in their person's world. And with that understanding, there starts to be a little bit of grace that happens of taking a deep breath and not being so overwhelmed or stressed with this process. When we work with the families, there are a lot of emotions. And although their person is in treatment, there are still these feelings and these experiences of walking on eggshells, not knowing what to expect. They have so many questions. And so I just want to share with you all these questions over the last year of working at Harmony that I hear the most. And the first one is, how do I help my family member? They come to me and they say, how do we help? What do we do? They're searching for these answers. Another big important question is, what do I do when my person comes home? Because while they're up there and they're in their treatment, working on themselves, working on their recovery, there's this question of, what do I do when they come home? They're getting all of this work, they're creating these small changes that lead to bigger changes, but I'm still feeling that pain and I'm still feeling that sadness. So what do I do? So that's a big component of that education piece, is kind of in a funny way of like 10 things to do when your person comes home. But in all seriousness, it's these are the steps that we can take when your person comes home. Another question is there more that I can do? A lot of times families question their role in the recovery process. They don't know where they fit in. And to be fair, our people who are in treatment, they don't know where their family should fit in either. There's a lot of firsts that are going to happen. And so, with the question, is there more that I can do? A lot of times I come into these family systems and there's a lot of confusion of like, we don't know what to do. And so that's where that knowledge is power. The fourth one is, how do I trust them again? This one happens every single week when I work with these families. How do I trust them again? I like to say that through this process and through our person struggling with addiction, we start to build a little bit of a brick wall around ourselves, or a really big brick wall around ourselves. And it's because it's really safe on this side of the brick wall because we can control these things on this side. On the other side of the brick wall is this reality that we don't know if we're ready to face. And so, with this process of recovery and treatment, how do we trust them again? I like to encourage, we have to look at our brick wall and we have to take a brick off at a time. There's this process that happens of, if our wall is so tall, we're not going to be able to see the progress they've made. We're not going to be able to hear them and hear those changes they're creating because we're on this other side. So there's this idea of trusting and verifying it. We have to give some trust to our people, and then it's okay if we have to verify it, if they're following through with their goals, things like that. And that kind of goes back to the role that they play in their recovery. And so when it comes to trust, we have to take a brick off at a time. I'm not asking them to bulldoze their brick wall down, but just a brick off at a time. And that's how we take those steps forward. Another one is, how do we start over? And I think this is a big one because it's like, how do we just move on? How do we start over? And I don't think we should necessarily start over, but I think that we should look at how far we've come, acknowledge that, and where do we continue? Because we don't want to have um, this process be like, okay, it's ending and we're starting over. We are going to use what we've learned and we're going to use all those tools and those growing pains that we've experienced, and we're going to take those steps forward. The last one, and this is probably the most impactful one, and that just speaks to my core, is the question, could I have done more? The family members who question themselves and say, could I have done more? They are searching for some answers. They're trying to make sense of what has happened to their people or what this process has been like. It's kind of a confusing phase. And so when they ask, could I have done more? They are trying to make sense of it. And what happens is they start to put the blame on themselves. And that's where the guilt and that's where the shame comes through. There's these questions of, is it something that I did? They don't know kind of this path forward and they're putting that blame on themselves. So through family engagement and education and building on this community, we start to learn that no, you could not have done more, and that this is where we're at, and we have to kind of harness that and take those steps forward. So, with that being said, there's the 3 C's to recovery that I really think are important for families to hear. You did not cause this. You cannot cure it, and you cannot control it. The family education piece is key because they begin to see that they're not alone by meeting other family members, hearing their stories. When we go through these 3 C's of recovery, we start to realize what we can and cannot control. And there's this empowering feeling that comes from this, and almost this breath of fresh air that I did not cause this. I cannot cure it and I cannot control it. And when we focus on the things that we can control versus the things we can't control, again, there's that empowerment that comes with it. And when we harness that, we begin to heal. When we begin to recognize that we cannot control these things, we start to take those steps forward. Working with these families, there is a lot of sadness that they hold. The sadness looks different for everyone. Again, all of our stories are different. Navigating that sadness while still trying to heal and move forward can be complicated. And so, first, we have to acknowledge that it's okay to be sad. This is a sad process. You're not alone in your sadness, and there are ways to heal from this. I am very optimistic and hopeful, and I believe that when we start to recover ourselves as family members, whether it's self care, whether it's a group that we go to, a new book that we're reading, getting connected to this outside family alumni setting, we are opening ourselves up to work on our own recovery. It's also a way to connect with our people who are in treatment. And I know that it's hard to think about, like, well, how can I connect with my person when I'm working on my own recovery? But when it comes to their person in treatment, they're working on their own recovery. They're learning these tools for their toolbox. Um, and when the families start to learn their tools for their toolbox, it's consistent. We're both putting in effort to take those steps to move on. I have this rule of thumb that I tell all of the families I work with is we have to be curious and we have to have a healthy dose of curiosity. What that looks like is we need to be curious about our person's time in treatment. We need to be curious about their recovery plan and what they want that to look like. And we need to be curious about what our role is in their recovery. We have to be curious because we can't have expectations. If they come out of treatment and we tell them what they should be doing, we tell them what their recovery should look like, we tell them what we need to see from them, we're setting them up to have these expectations that aren't realistic. When we change our mindset to be curious, to be open, we kind of bounce the ball back into their court, so to speak. We put it in their hands and we're curious of what we can do for them. We're curious what they need. We're curious what it looks like to take those steps forward. With being curious and being open and hearing what the recovery plan, this is the good opportunity to connect and say, okay, I hear you on all of these pieces. And this is how I'm going to recover. It's really powerful sharing with their people how they're going to recover. I'm going to go to an Al-Anon meeting. I'm going to go to a Nar-Anon meeting. I'm connected with this family alumni group. I'm going to read these books. When they see that their people are putting in this work to also heal, it's just this really, I don't know, I just say it's this system of good feelings because everybody is healing together, and that can be really powerful. Um, so again, the important part of this is meeting them where they're at and continuing to take those steps forward. I like to remind them that together they make a family that is not broken, but breaking through. Again, that brings in that sadness piece. There is this sense of, where did I go wrong? Questioning myself. And we have to recognize the growth that we're all putting in to continue forward together. So, together, we make a family that's not broken, but breaking through. We have to be positive and we have to look at this as this time will be different. Now, it's hard to be so optimistic, but it's really an important part of creating this change in this cycle. If we are thinking about our past, if we are thinking about all of these hardships and challenges, we're not meeting them where they're at. And we have a problem with seeing the progress that they've done because we're holding on to all of these hardships. And so, a part of this recovery process for the families is knowing what they need to heal and to let go, essentially. It doesn't take away everything that's happened, but more so of like, okay, I'm going to set this to the side and I'm going to do this together. We're going to do this together. Again, I told you guys I use a lot of metaphors and analogies. It's because I truly think that we can connect to them and make them personal for our own lives. At the beginning, I said that all of our stories are different, and it's true. Every family that I've met, they have a different story. Sure, there's some similarities to it, but it's different. When we look at our stories, this is something that I don't not only work with the families on, but I work with all of our people in treatment, is that when we look at our story, all of our hardships, all of our challenges, and all of our difficult moments, they are a part of our story. And unfortunately, we can't take those away or make them go away. They're there. The big thing that I want to remind everyone is that it doesn't have to be our whole story. So there's truly this process of like moving forward. I want families to look at this as a new chapter. We're not starting over, we're not abruptly ending something without any resolution. We're just starting a new chapter. And they need to trust this next chapter because they're the author of it. Our challenges and the stressful moments, those those are in chapter 3, and we can leave those in chapter 3. We don't have to read chapter 3 either if we don't want to. They're there and we can't make them go away fully, but they don't have to be our whole story. And so there's truth, excuse me, there's this truly this space where we move and transition into chapter 4, and that's that homecoming piece of it. There's a lot of things that go into using this story metaphor, um, but a big one is choice. Like we choose if we want to move forward. This is how we move forward is with the curiosity, being open, meeting them where they're at. If we don't meet them where we're at, we're stuck in chapter 3. And so this is a big thing that I use. I wanted to just share with you guys. I pulled and I compiled some quotes, so to speak, from some families that I've worked with in the past. And I just wanted to share it because it not only fills my cup up, but I hope it fills your cup up too. And first off, I had this family member and they said, "Oh, how I wished that we used this support years or that we had this support years ago. I am feeling more hopeful than ever before." We have to get into this mindset of changing how we look at things. Another one says, "Feeling like we are involved in the process has helped me move past some of the frustrations that I've held on to." Again, we have a lot of frustrations that we're holding on to, and we're not sure how to move forward. So, the family component and getting them involved in treatment makes them feel like they're a part of it, where they can move to their next chapter. Um, and the last one says, "Knowing that I'm not alone has made me feel grounded for the first time in a long time." It's truly incredible and special to see the changes that these families have started to create and to see the community that they've built. Knowing that they're not alone in this process gives them a lot of healing. And that was what families have said about family involvement. So I'll leave it on this for a minute before we get into COVID. I wanted to share that all of these small changes that families start to do lead them to those bigger changes that we've kept talking about. And when these bigger changes happen, this helps the chances of a more successful treatment. This helps our person who struggles with addiction have a supportive foundation when they go home. One thing that I can say is that when I work with my people in treatment, they are nervous to go home. They're nervous to see their families. They also feel immense amount of guilt. When there's this family component and they see that their people are having the family education groups, getting connected with community people, talking to other people, they also have like this sigh of relief that when they go home, they have this solid foundation that they can continue to walk forward together. Of course, connection and growth has to happen as well. A lot of times I hear the real work starts when you go home, and that's true. We can learn all of the tools for our toolbox, but the real work happens when we go home. This comes with establishing new normals within the family and finding new hobbies and changing the previous cycle. My favorite question to ask family members is, what do you guys like to do for fun? And it's usually followed by a lot of silence. And again, that sadness piece comes up. And we navigate it. In reality, they haven't done a lot of things for fun lately. This addiction and this cycle has kind of consumed their family system. Maybe they haven't been enjoying the hobbies that they used to do. Maybe they haven't taken a family vacation in a while. Maybe they haven't had a game night or a movie night in a while. There's a lot of sadness that comes with this realization of we haven't had a lot of fun lately. We don't know what we enjoy to do together. This is a big piece of it. While the families are recovering, while our people in treatment are recovering, there's this kind of gap in the middle. And bridging that gap is with connection and with having fun. So, my encouragement to them is to implement some FFF, and that stands for forced family fun. But in all seriousness, whether it's forced family fun or not, I like to just think of it as we have to create these new pathways to have fun and experience life together. There's a lot of hardships and challenges and bumps in our road that come with recovery and trying to establish these new normals. Our fun and our family fun doesn't have to suffer from that. Our whole system, in reality, our whole system has been through a lot. Again, that ripple effect. It doesn't just affect the person who is struggling with addiction, it affects everyone. And so, with acknowledging that and knowing what the family has been through, and also this last year struggling with COVID and not being able to do the things that we've wanted to do before, it's put in some barriers. And so, this next chapter for them should implement some fun, some hobbies, some new pathways of connecting. Talking about COVID and kind of jumping into this setting too and giving some time for this, there has been some limitations that COVID has presented that has changed family support. It's limited the in-person family programs or even eliminated the in-person family programs altogether. It has reduced the amount of in-person meetings for families to attend, such as Al-Anon and Nar-Anon. Our world has kind of moved on to a Zoom world or a video chat world, and that is sometimes hard for people to connect through. It has eliminated family visitation on weekends, and so they're not able to see their people in person like they were before in treatment. And it has made it harder to get connected with therapists and outside resources. The reason for that is it's really hard to find a therapist right now. It's hard to find people who are in person. It's hard to get connected to these resources. A lot of things have been put on pause because we can't meet. And so COVID has presented a lot of limitations and has changed the family support. But I think you guys know it's coming because I am such an optimistic person. I also want to acknowledge the benefits that this has opened. While this has been hard for us all to adjust, it has opened the door for us and others to create this virtual family education support. When we open that door for the virtual family education support, it has allowed out of state family members to feel included in this healing process where they haven't felt included before because they wouldn't be able to travel in for the in-person family support and things like that. And so I look at that as that's a big benefit. I've worked with a lot of families in different states and even different countries in the last couple months. There's been people from different countries who have been able to attend the educational groups. And to me, we're making big waves with that. We're reaching out to more people than we were able to before. It has created some new ways for families to connect with other families and who have had similar experiences. So for us up at Harmony, our newest thing is this last month, we have launched the Harmony Hub app for family members. So we look at the family members who have gone through this educational group, who continue to have the peer support group through Harmony as family alumni. So we give them that title that they are family alumni. And we have created this app for them that they have 24/7 access to. I am on the app and I post daily resources for them. We have like book of the day Thursday. There's Zoom links for meetings. If someone's having a hard day, they go on there and they say, "Hey, I'm really struggling today." And there's people commenting, "Do you want to go out for coffee? Do you want to give me a call?" It's this immediate support for this unique and special group. And so that's something that's really special that we haven't been able to do before. And it's created new pathways moving forward to have a strong online element. So there's the online peer support groups that are free to the family alumni to attend who have specifically had people at Harmony. There's so many more online Al-Anon and Nar-Anon groups, and it's becoming more normal. So I look at this as a benefit because we're kind of opening our door and we're creating these pathways that even when restrictions lift and things kind of go back to how they were, we're still going to have this strong online piece, and that's a big deal. Some current tools right now to engage families in 2021 is, again, the online community and online support group. These are the tools that we utilize. There are resources posted on not only Harmony's website, but these follow-up resources that I send out that have meetings for any time during the day, meetings at night. We are starting to get back into the world of we can do some in-person things. We have our Harmony Hub app as a new tool to engage families in 2021. We are offering the virtual education group to all of those who want to be involved. We are changing things from how we did it in the past, and now we are offering it to everybody who identifies themselves to be a part of that family system versus just one or two people. We're not putting a limit on who can join. The offering of online resources such as videos and books and podcasts. We have a family newsletter that we send out. The big thing to keep families engaged in 2021 is to know they're not alone, they are supported, and they have access to being a part of this process, and they are a part of this process. I think it's important to acknowledge the families in this, and it's okay to celebrate the families in this piece. with that celebrating piece, we want to celebrate both recovery from addiction and the recovery of the family. This is a big deal. This is our new chapter. This is us stepping forward and creating these changes that are going to have a better outcome than maybe they have before. Again, when our people in treatment feel like they have this foundation for going home, they are going to be able to be more open with their people. They're going to be able to share when the families are curious about things. I have a lot of rule of thumbs that I just realized, but a lot of different tools that I like to give to families is we have to start changing our mindset. We have to ask our people versus telling our people. So that's where it comes in with curiosity. We have to ask them, how was your day? What was this like? What does your recovery look like? Instead of telling them, you need to do this, you need to go to this meeting. If you don't do this, this will happen. So when we move to a space of asking versus telling, we start to kind of pave that way for that foundation to have some success after treatment. So I will leave you with a couple thoughts and a couple things that I really like to think about when involving families is when we get into this mindset, when we listen to understand versus listening to respond, we hear our people in a different way. When we look at problems and situations, if we look at problems as situations, it gets easier because situations have solutions. And when we change our perspective of how we view things, our light at the end of the tunnel gets a little bit brighter. It's all about this mindset that we start stepping into and changing the way that we look at things. This is how we change the cycle that happens. So, my favorite one, the problems. If we go into it and we say, oh my gosh, I have all these problems, I have all these stressors, this is a problem, this is a problem. We change that mindset and say, this is a situation and this is a situation. Situations have solutions and it creates faster progress, so to speak. We don't have too much time with our people up in treatment. And so there has to be faster communication, there has to be faster understanding. With changing our perspective and our light at the end of the tunnel getting a little bit brighter, once we start to see that light, we are more likely to walk towards it and we are more likely to get to that light because those are where our goals are. We start implementing family fun. We start understanding what our person in treatment has gone through. We start giving ourselves that education and that background of the disease model of addiction. And we start to remove that blame that we've put on ourselves and we kind of set it over here. It's not ours to pick up as family members, and it's not in our space. And so when we remove that blame of, could I have done more? What did I do wrong? Could I have noticed this sooner? And we start owning, okay, the 3 C's, I can't cure it and I can't control it. That control piece is a big part too. Focusing on what we can control. The families can control their self-care. The families can control how they choose to recover. The families can control how much community outreach they want, how much they want to put in on these online groups. They control that, and the power of control is pretty special. And so I think just leaving you all with that idea of when we start to change our perspective of how we see things, how we view things, it changes the cycle. And our system that has been unbalanced, so think about that cue ball and all the other pool balls, we're kind of bringing it back together and we're racking it back up in the triangle. And we are feeling this sense of homeostasis where our system is feeling balanced again. And it's not easy and it's not like a flip of a switch and it takes time, but we have to trust the process because we are the author of our story and we get to choose where we go with that. this is a really special quote that I wanted to put in here. And it's, don't dwell on what went wrong. Instead, focus on what to do next. Spend your energy moving forward together towards an answer. This is something that I think about personally daily, is we cannot dwell on what went wrong in the past. We have to take those steps forward. We have to move forward together. Nobody's alone on this. All right, you guys. So that is what I had. And this is this information. So I want you to know that you have this lifetime pass to contact me. And so if there are questions or if you want to talk any more about this, I really love this. I really love the work with families. And so my door, so to speak, is open, whether it's through email or through phone calls. I want to be a resource to you as well. And I really love talking about those things. So that's what I have, Christy.
Oh gosh, thank you so much, Morgan. That was such a great presentation. So much information, so much useful information. And so I'm going to give everybody a couple minutes. If you have any questions, to go ahead and type them in the chat box. And I'm going to remind you that we have recorded this webinar. It will be on our website probably by the end of day on Monday. Give me a little extra time as I am traveling back home this week. I do have a question while we see what's happening. And it is, what advice do you have in cases of teenage kids whom one parent is recovering and they feel like not getting involved in recover, but rather they fill their calendars with activities, sports, friends, etc., somehow managing to be busy enough and focus in on their own life, probably building this big wall? Is that wall ever something somewhat healthy for that individual? And how could we encourage them to feel safe with getting involved?
Hmm, that is such a good question. When it comes to teenagers, especially, they have an interesting way of coping themselves. And so the way that they cope, it sounds like they're filling their calendar with sports, friends, and activities. Teenagers, whether they want to admit it or not, they're pretty sensitive. And so by filling their calendars with sports and activities and making themselves busy, they are building that wall. I think an important piece of that, of how we encourage them to feel safe or getting involved, is voicing to them that it's not their fault. A lot of times, kids and teenagers, they almost take on this responsibility of like kind of what family members do of, did I do something? Is this because of me? Did I cause stress? And so by them filling their calendars and kind of building up this wall, again, it's really safe on this side of the wall. So it's like normalizing this of like, this is not your fault. You just have to focus on being a kid. You have no responsibilities with like fixing, solving, or making this problem go away. And that encouragement of involvement is knowing that they're not alone. And so there are specific groups for kids. You know, I know specifically they're like the younger kids, the Hazelton Betty Ford Children's Program is a great option for them. And there are some groups for teenagers across Colorado that I do have resources for that I can help support with. But it's knowing that they're not alone, because a lot of times they're going through their own growing pains and changing. And so having a parent who struggles with addiction can be really hard. It can be embarrassing as well, and they don't know who to talk to. And so letting them kind of fill their calendar of what they need, because that's how they cope, but normalizing it of like, it's not your fault and you're not alone. I hope that helps.
Oh gosh, great answer. Thank you. We've got a couple other questions that have popped up. One is it recommended to set boundaries with our loved ones while being in mediation with the family counselor? And will the boundaries be taken more serious and create less conflict this way?
That is such a good question. And I didn't even talk about boundaries. Boundaries are so healthy and so important. That's a huge piece of the family education component, is that it's okay to create these boundaries with your people. And for our people who are at Harmony, it's okay to have boundaries too. And so when I work with the families, it's like, yes, you can have boundaries and your people are going to have boundaries as well. And so knowing that we're both creating these boundaries that we can then share, you know, that's that part of that curiosity of, what do you need this to look like? What are your boundaries? My boundaries are this. Okay, great. These are my boundaries. Normalizing these conversations helps bridge that gap when they come home. So it is definitely recommended to set some boundaries with loved ones while they're up in treatment, because not only do they have the support of their lead counselors, they would have support from myself or like a similar person who's in a similar role. And then when we have that resolution with family, and if we do family therapy sessions, we're able to talk about those boundaries and they are taken more seriously. Yeah, that's a really
Perfect.
good question.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Another question. Monica would like to know if you have a reading list that you give to families that you could share, or even recommendations that you could share in the moment.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, my list is so long, so I can't pull directly from. There's a lot of great books by Brene Brown just for like this sense of self and like who you are as a person, and Braving the Wilderness and The Gifts of Imperfection. Those are really heartwarming books just for family members, just to get that sense of self. On the Harmony website, under the Family Resource tab, there's a lot of incredible books that are listed that I usually hand out. And then if that is a possibility to send a book list and a follow-up email, I will, because I have a lot of incredible books. Danielle Siegel is another great author. There's there's so many. So check out the Harmony website. There's a lot listed on there. And then for that sense of self as a family member, not necessarily within the addiction, but just like we have to do some growing ourselves. Brene Brown has some really incredible ones.
Perfect. I agree 100%. Danielle has a question. She says, do you have any thoughts around clients that will not use an AA or NA approach to addiction treatment? I've worked with clients and also know people personally that will not use the AA NA way to combat addiction. I would like resources or thoughts for this emerging group of substance use clients.
Yeah, that's a good question too. A lot of times AA groups are not kind of that 12-step path is not the path that they necessarily want to take. And so when I'm working with families and this comes up, the families get a little worried because the AA groups, they provide the structure to and with recovery and things like that. And so when families hear, oh, my person doesn't want to go that traditional route, that creates some stress. And so what my encouragement is like, okay, but what does your recovery plan look like? Like what do you need um to be sober, to like live this life of recovery? And so kind of game planning with them. I think it's important too with the families of, okay, if this isn't the path you're going to take, what is my role in your recovery? And asking that and having that conversation of where do the family members sit in? Do they want their family members to check in every single day on what you do today for your recovery? Or do they want it to be more of a hands-off approach? It's hard to decide, and I don't have like an exact answer of like what they should do, but sometimes those groups like aren't for everyone. And so just seeing like what would work for them. Do they like the community piece more of like going out and hiking with people who are sober, going to events that are with people who are sober, those types of things? Or what does that look like for them? And then knowing like it's okay that they do have the freedom to choose what's going to be best for their recovery, and we have to find ways to support them with that and kind of support ourselves with that too.
Right. Perfect. Wow, we had a lot of great questions, a lot of great information. And Danielle, I don't know if you can see the comments or not. Monica said that she has clients that often seek out LifeRing or Celebrate Recovery. Alice Marie mentioned that there is a lot of pushback on that topic right now, kind of emerging with AA and NA. And Angelina popped in with Smart Recovery or Celebrate Recovery, our author, also good options. So if we don't have any other questions, I want to thank you again, Morgan, for a great presentation. And if anybody has any questions about it, please reach out to her. She's very accessible. And again, we are very grateful and so honored that she's working with Harmony and sharing her expertise with us and our clients and expanding our program. And we have another webinar coming up the end of April. Stay tuned for details. They will be out as soon as I can get them out to you, hopefully next week. We appreciate all of you and your support of the Harmony webinar series. And I look forward to seeing you again next week. You guys have a great month, and thanks for everything.
Bye, everyone.